You order a coffee, hand over your card, and wait for the payment to go through. The cashier taps the screen, turns it towards you, and says the familiar line, "It's just going to ask you a question." On the screen are 3 large buttons offering tips of 20%, 25%, and 30%. Somewhere near the bottom, usually in smaller text, are custom tip and no tip. The cashier is standing only a few feet away. A customer is waiting behind you. You have perhaps 3 seconds to make a decision. The coffee cost $5, but suddenly the transaction feels less like paying for a drink and more like proving that you are not a rude person. You tap 20%, not because the service was extraordinary, but because pressing no tip feels strangely uncomfortable. That moment explains why digital tipping screens are so effective. They take what used to be a relatively private decision and place it inside a public social situation. Today, the decision often happens while an employee is holding the device or standing close enough that you believe they may see your choice. You are no longer asking only, "How much was the service worth?" You are also asking, "What will this person think if I choose 0?" That second question is where the pressure begins. Researchers have studied this effect and found that reduced privacy during tipping can make customers feel less in control. A field study and controlled experiments published in the Journal of Business Research examined what happens when customers feel observed while deciding whether and how much to tip. The researchers found that lower tipping privacy could sometimes increase the amount left, but it could also reduce the customer's willingness to return or recommend the business. The screen also influences the decision through the numbers it presents. Imagine one screen offering 5%, 10%, and 15%, while another offers 20%, 25%, and 30%. Both may technically allow a custom amount, but they create completely different ideas of what is normal. On the first screen, 15% looks generous. On the second, 20% looks like the minimum respectable choice. This is known as anchoring. Once a high number appears in front of you, your mind begins judging other options in relation to it. When 30% is shown, 20% suddenly feels modest. Without that option, you might have considered 15% reasonable. The screen has not forced you to do anything. It has simply moved the starting point of the decision. Research using millions of taxi and rideshare transactions has shown that suggested tip amounts can influence what people pay. One study discussed by the Marketing Science Institute found that when suggested taxi tips were raised from 15%, 20%, and 25% to 20%, 25%, and 30%, the average tip increased. The size and position of the buttons matter as well. The suggested percentages are usually bright, large, and easy to tap. Declining may require finding a smaller button. Leaving a different amount may mean pressing custom, entering a number, and confirming it. That extra effort seems minor, but it matters when someone is waiting behind you or an employee is holding the device. The easiest option is often the one the business wants you to choose. This is not necessarily a plan created by the cashier. In many cases, workers have no control over the percentages. The business owner, manager, or payment software settings determine what appears. Employees may feel awkward too, especially when they have to rotate the screen toward customers dozens of times a day and pretend not to notice what is selected. Still, the social pressure is real because tipping is connected to generosity, respect, fairness, and appreciation. Pressing no tip can feel like publicly rejecting those values, even when the employee has done little more than hand you a packaged item. Paying an extra dollar ends the awkwardness. Refusing saves money, but it may require tolerating a few uncomfortable seconds. This pressure is especially strong where the tipping rules are unclear. Most people understand that tipping is customary at a full-service restaurant, particularly in the United States. The confusion begins at coffee counters, bakeries, takeaway shops, self-service kiosks, food trucks, and retail counters where customers may receive very little direct service. A Pew Research Center survey found that 72% of American adults believed tipping was expected in more places than it had been 5 years earlier. At the same time, only about 1/3 said it was very easy to know when to tip or how much to leave. That uncertainty gives the screen enormous influence. When customers do not know the rule, the interface gets to suggest one. The same survey showed how different tipping habits remain across situations. About 92% of people who ate at sit-down restaurants said they always or often tipped. That figure dropped to 25% for coffee purchases and around 12% for fast casual restaurants without servers. Pew also found that more Americans opposed businesses suggesting tip amounts than supported the practice. Digital tipping has expanded faster than agreement about where tipping belongs. The owner may see tipping as a way to help staff earn more without raising menu prices. Everyone enters the transaction with a different understanding, and the screen turns that confusion into money. However, it would be inaccurate to say that tipping screens always make everyone tip more. A University of Nebraska-Lincoln study using a simulated coffee shop found that screen-based payments created more negative feelings but did not necessarily produce larger tips. The presence of a visible server also did not increase tipping in that experiment. Some customers respond by tipping more, while others become irritated and press 0. Customers dislike feeling that a voluntary reward has become an obligation. A tip is supposed to express appreciation for service. When it is requested before the service is complete, presented through unusually high defaults, or asked for during a simple retail purchase, it can begin to feel like a hidden fee. The debate is also complicated because many workers genuinely depend on tips. Under United States federal law, employers using the tip credit system may pay certain tipped workers as little as $2.13 per hour in direct wages, provided that wages and tips together reach at least the federal minimum wage. Some states require higher wages or do not allow that system, so the rules vary. The worker behind the counter is not always the villain. In some businesses, tips are an important part of income. The real conflict is created by a system that places responsibility for employee earnings on the customer and then uses interface design to increase the pressure to contribute. The customer feels manipulated. The worker feels dependent. The business avoids dealing directly with the tension. One way to handle the situation is to decide your personal tipping rules before the screen appears. You might tip a set percentage for table service, leave a smaller amount for counter service that involves real effort, and leave nothing for a straightforward retail transaction. What matters is making the decision calmly instead of inventing it under pressure. It also helps to look for the custom option, check whether the percentage is calculated before or after tax, and remember that the middle button is not an official standard. It is a suggestion chosen by the business or its software. Pressing no tip does not require an apology. You can still thank the worker, smile, and complete the transaction politely. Digital payment systems are useful, fast, and convenient. They make it easier to tip when you genuinely want to. But they also allow businesses to redesign the final seconds of a purchase. Large buttons create an anchor. The worker's presence creates social pressure. The waiting line creates urgency. The hidden custom option creates friction. Together, these details turn a simple financial choice into a small public test of character. That is the tipping screen trap. You are not just deciding whether the service deserves another dollar. You are deciding while being watched, hurried, and quietly shown what a good customer is expected to choose. Sometimes, the easiest way to end the uncomfortable moment is simply to pay more. Have you ever tipped more because someone was watching? Share your experience below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more stories about the hidden systems shaping our choices.